Welcome into our lives.
And welcome to the Expanders Club podcast.
We're so happy to have you.
Join us as we embark on a journey of deep exploration, soul searching, and asking the hard questions.
With the goal of truly understanding the most aligned, empowered, and purposeful versions of ourselves.
We want to live an extraordinary life, and we're willing to dig deep to find out what it takes.
Buckle up. You're about to meet a new version of yourself, an extraordinary one. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Expanders Club podcast. I am your host, an oracle, your guide on this expansive journey between spirituality and human life, Brooke Harris. And I am so grateful to have you. So happy to be here with you. We are early March, Pisces season, eclipse season. We just had a lunar eclipse and a full moon on the same day. Shit is spicy. Is it feeling spicy for you guys? Things are feeling spicy for me. I'm also 35 and a half weeks pregnant. So just a little extra spice in my life, but things are intense right now. I think there was this misconception that like the minute it turned into the new year, the year of the fire horse, things were going to get a little bit easier. And that's just not how it's working. Some things maybe, right? A different energy. I definitely feel a different energy. I hope you guys do too. But I don't feel that ease. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing. I say that because I'm going through my own stuff myself. But these moments of difficulty, this is a moment where I think the universe is showing us very clearly what needs to go, what needs to be adjusted, what needs to be transformed, the truth we need to be telling ourselves. And those moments are very uncomfortable and are backed by a lot of uncertainty. But this is the moment, this is the time where we grow, where we really grow and make progress, right? So that's one little nugget I'm holding on to right now is, okay, things don't exactly feel like ease and flow. What are the lessons? Why are these things coming up? What are they meant to teach me? What am I meant to do with them? What is this day and this moment calling for from me? And having certainty that it's all meant to be. It's all happening for me, not to me, right? And also the knowing that I've been here before. I've been through many transformation cycles before. So have you. And on the other side, it's always good. It's always good. We're always grateful, even though we can't see the other side. Like that's the really scary part, right? And I do feel right now we're going through an especially large portal, an especially big transformation period, and that can be really scary. But if we can take hindsight, reflect, we can also hold certainty that like, I will get through this and it's going to be really big and beautiful on the other side. And you guys, I share that coming from, of course, I'm about to approach the birthing portal any week now. And there's no question, if you've had a kid, you understand this. There's no question there's huge transformation that's going to happen there, even just on a very logical level, right? We're adding a new family member. We're adding a baby. We haven't had a baby in 4.5 years. My body's going to go through a physical transformation, a physical portal. But energetically, it's a huge, huge portal. And then, of course, many other things are happening around me for my higher good, right? That sometimes I wish maybe wouldn't be happening right now, right before I'm about to give birth, but that's just not how the universe wants it. So all that to say, I am right here with you. I'm heading through that portal with you and holding your hand. We're in this together, and I have trust in my journey. I have trust in your journey, and I have trust for the expansion that we are going to experience and the energy that we are going to be living in on the other side, that it's just so much greater than we can even imagine right now. So sending you a big hug if you feel like you're in it, if you feel like you're heading toward the unknown. you're not alone? And can you approach it as something exciting, knowing that yes, it might be hard. Yes, there are going to be lessons in there for you. Thank you for the lessons. I'm ready. I'm ready to be a better version, a bigger version. I'm ready for the next level. All right, today's episode, we have a lovely guest. Her name is Molly Flynn, and we talk a lot about catalysts for expansion. She shares her journey of kind of losing herself in an abusive relationship, that being a huge catalyst for her awakening and her growth, and what her journey has been to come home to herself and how she is leading others back home to themselves, which is such a foundational piece of this whole spiritual journey. To know, to love, to be yourself, you have to start there before you can get any further into learning to be a psychic or opening the Akashic records or manifesting things. You guys have heard me say this before. You have to build that foundation. And Molly shares her story in a really thoughtful way, and she shares her journey and her tools that I know will feel very helpful and very relatable to some of you. So I hope you guys enjoy. Happy Pisces season. Happy eclipse season. You've got this. We all do. If you need a little extra help, I have, I think, maybe 2 or 3 spots still available for readings before I head through my portal and head out on a little bit of my sacred pause through the baby portal. I'd love to meet with you before I go. Otherwise, I'll be back on the books in June or July. But if you need help understanding what is needed from you in this moment, what your purpose is, what the universe is asking of you, what next steps are, I'd love to help guide you. You can book with me through my Instagram. There's a link there. I'll also link it in the show notes. My information and Molly's information will all be listed in the show notes if you want to reach out to either of us. Appreciate you guys. You've got this. You're not alone. We're all in this together. And I promise, it will be worth it. Sending you so much love. All right, Molly, hello, and welcome to the Expanders Club podcast.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're so excited to have you here. I am so thrilled for the rabbit holes that we are going to go down today. But first, I want to share with you that I picked a card, and I don't do this for I've like done it one other time for an episode, but I have this deck called the Wild and Sacred Feminine deck. For those of you watching on YouTube, I'm showing it. I highly recommend it. And it felt very appropriate for our conversation. And the card that I picked, again, I'm showing this card, is Compassion, which also felt very perfect for a lot of the things we're going to talk about. And I just want to read you guys something, and I want to get your take on this, Molly. Yeah. Having compassion starts and ends with having compassion for all those unwanted parts of ourselves, all those imperfections that we don't even want to look at. And I feel like that's, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I know about you, I feel like that's been a lot of your journey and is a piece of what you are helping women do, is look at all those parts, have compassion for themselves, and alchemize that into something really, really big and beautiful. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, and it's an ever evolving journey, right? Because those parts of us that we don't want to look at, there are other parts underneath. There are layers to that part. I think that every time we are faced with a trigger or a challenge, the hurt that we feel, the pain that we feel, the fear that we feel sort of scratches at maybe, a conscious memory that we had from childhood, or like, ooh, that feels like something with my mother. Ooh, that feels like something with a former partner. Ooh, and then as you actually unravel that challenge and deal with that trigger, the level of compassion that you have to have for yourself and all those parts actually just intensifies, because if you really stay with yourself to the end of it, which in reality, moment to moment in life, like there's never any end to it. um, but if you stay with that particular experience through the end, you're going to find that the one part you thought was in control is actually being controlled by one, two, maybe 10 other parts of yourself underneath the surface there, right? And I think that, something in our culture that we don't do a very good job of talking about, even in like the spiritual healing community, is that it's not overnight. Like
Mhm.
these parts of us, especially if you um, are just beginning your journey, like it's going to take years, right, to unravel this and to unravel the parts of yourself and to really actually build up the capacity. Because I think a lot of the challenge with building compassion for yourself is that if that wasn't modeled to you throughout your life, you have to sit in a lot of mud
Mhm.
and ride a lot of waves in order to build your capacity to have compassion for yourself. Um, and
Yeah,
that takes a lot of time and resilience.
and it's kind of a constant exercise. At least that's my experience. Is you go in and out of it too,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
it's it's more about like how quickly can you get back in it or remind yourself to have that compassion for
Hmm.
yourself.
Hmm. Yeah. And then, as women, the waves that we ride naturally with our hormones, and over the course of the month, just how different we can feel about ourselves and our journey, and the though that those biological changes that are happening, like they bring up parts of us for us to face, right, for us to
Yes.
get to know on a deeper level. I mean, even just last month, or last week, I have been on my own hormone journey this year in particular, and lots of flare ups around chronic pain and chronic inflammation that have honestly been around for 14 years. Um, but the whole pattern finally showed itself, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just like one area in my body here 10 years ago, one area in my body here 6 years ago. And even just last week, I was end of ovulation, beginning of luteal, and I can really, whether it's like my Piscean energy or, whatever I want to attribute it to, like I can really go quite dark very
Mhm.
easily, right? And I kind of love it there. Like there's a bit of my ego that like really like loves, and we can get into this, but I've played a lot in the victim, and so it's easy for me to just like simmer in like, oh, woe is me, right?
Yeah.
Something that was coming up was, well, you haven't healed yourself enough. Here's that migraine. Here are these symptoms.
Yep.
And if you didn't have the symptoms, Molly, then we would have the evidence that you did the thing well enough,
Mhm.
right? To be good enough. But in reality, 6 months ago, I was on a lot of edges. Over the course of this year, had to take time off of work. I was like having a really hard time walking. My migraines were taking me out for days on end, which is a pattern that I've seen before in my life. But I was trying to, now I'm trying to address them holistically, naturally, instead of just covering it up and drudging through with whatever it is,
Yep.
ibuprofen, etc. And I had to really sit with that, like, no, this is just my body telling me that something is not yet wholly integrated or dissolved, right?
Mhm.
And that's okay. Like it can just be that way. And if I shame myself on top of it and play into that part that really likes to be the victim, and instead of just showing her love and having compassion for her, then it actually makes the symptoms worse. It makes the dis-ease worse.
Yes, it is. It's a hard place to be, and I've been there many times because I've dealt with Lyme disease. It's a hard place to be being sick or being held down by your body and being in bed. And for a lot of these things, not necessarily the migraine, but for me with Lyme disease, I'm in bed, my body's not working, but my brain's still working. And that is a terrifying, terrifying place to be, right? Because you just go down all the loops, all the self blame, exactly what you just said of like,
Mm.
why can't I heal myself? Why can't I figure this out? I'm doing all the supplements. If
Yeah,
only if I ate better, or if I didn't let that stress happen, or, um, yeah, it's a very scary rabbit hole, and there's no lonelier place to be than in bed with symptoms and feeling like you don't have control over your body.
totally. And at the same time, um, she, in my opinion, she has far more intelligence than my mind,
Mhm.
right? And so, my health issues are largely like, they're not diagnosable really. It's just that I believe they are ancestral, generational, and nervous system rooted, right? Like just earlier this week, I was managing and preparing to manage a situation that it is highly stressful. Like a lot was being triggered, right? And having to be in integrity with my own values and supporting other people, and just sometimes life's decisions are really hard to make, and I could feel this inflammatory pattern appearing again in my it's primarily for me like feet and left side, runs up my left side, which there's all kinds of stuff we could go down there around the feminine and the mother and whatnot, but um, I could feel it like as I was thinking about this situation, just the rumination around this situation, which inevitably I had to deal with. But wow, like she knows,
Yes.
she always knows more. She knows better. And if we actually begin to listen to that, it occurred to me how often in my life, um, you ignore really small little signals because you're not taught that they have an intelligence behind them, right?
Yes.
And how
Yes.
often women, and this is, where we could maybe dive into my relational history, but, I even thought about the very first time in my former relationship, which was like, maybe the third time that I spent time with my former partner, where I recognized that I was feeling fear and feeling like, whoa, this is unsafe. But I ignored that to appease the other, right?
Yes. Mm.
And it's just really important to me that we don't that as women in community we get really brutally honest about how it is that we override our intuition and our
Yes.
bodies,
Yep.
to create a sense of safety that is not real.
Yeah, and I think we can all relate, no matter what level you're at, right? Like you've had the gut instinct, right? Like you've had that gut feeling, or you've like on a small level, like we know that our body is sending us signals. And I love how you talk about the ignoring of it, because I had that same journey where I was like, when I would get to the place that I was in bed, to where
Hmm.
my body put me in bed and I couldn't get out and I had plenty of time to think, I could trace back all the signs that I ignored, right? That led to my body being like, all right, chick, like we're done. We're done
Hmm.
giving you the signs. And something I realized too, and one of the ways that I really like the way that my final healing chapter looked with my Lyme disease was I was not communicating with the body. I wasn't asking her what she had to tell me in those moments. What do I need to do to get through this? What I need to do to get past this? What is being triggered? And when I started asking the questions, the answers are right there.
Mhm.
They're right there. And that was for me, with the Lyme disease, it's pretty intense. I was on thousands of dollars of supplements and shots and seeing a naturopath, and that stuff all helped a bit, right? But it wasn't until I got to the point where I was like, there's nothing else I can do in that world. Like I'm doing the things. Why am I in bed? And I
Right.
got to the root of like what the emotional, the message, the emotions, the trauma that I had to work through. And it wasn't until I did that and started having a conversation with my body that I healed myself completely.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I wholeheartedly agree and have that lived experience, pretty recently. Like that's been a pretty big shift in my journey over 2025 is that I can go to all of the healers and all of the therapists and I can do all of these things. And guess what, Brooke? In some way, that was still my consciousness trying to grasp to my own to Molly's manifestation of victimhood. Because if
Mm-hmm.
someone else has the answers, then I don't have to do the work. I don't have to listen to what is actually happening inside my own soul and my own system.
Mm-hmm.
And and there's a time and a place for it, right? Like there 3 years ago in August of 2022 when I left that relationship, I mean, I refer to it as my karmic reckoning. Like I had no way to resource myself, right? And so I had to, and there is beauty in that, and I've learned a lot. And at the same time, um, you, we all, I believe, we all eventually get to a point in our journey where we realize that no one else has it. Like no one else has our answers because there are answers. And like you said, they are there. They exist. They're like in our bubble of consciousness that we walk around with. And we can either um cultivate practices and a level of presence and awareness with ourselves to hold those answers closely, or those answers get to leak out,
Yeah.
right? Like they don't trust us. And so they're going to go on their merry way. And, and we, then that's why we start to feel alone. It's why we start to feel lost.
Yeah, there's so much there that I want to dig into, but if you're open to it, let's talk a little bit about your background and your story and what has led you here, because I think it gives a lot of meaning to the conversation and to your path.
Totally. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty normal gal. um, I, um, I guess I'll start, so I was 5 years ago, I was working in tech. I, you know, am your pretty typical, like, firstborn, first daughter
Same.
personality, or I should say conditioning. Um, and a few different routes in my career, in my 20s, and I ended up in tech. And I was working as a product manager for a long time. I wanted to, and that was what was happening in our culture, was like that boss bitch culture, right? Like
Yeah.
I wanted to climb the ladder, and I did enjoy the work for a long time. And then COVID happened at the same time that I was really becoming burnt out, and to no one else's fault but myself, just like not having boundaries around work and not having a sense of worth and identity
Yes.
outside of work,
Yes.
which leads you to work 80 hours a week.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And had been struggling with things that at the time were attention deficit and depression and anxiety and all this. And I remember um, early COVID, I saw a hypnotherapist for the first time, like doing something alternative. And um, I would say that, like, looking, knowing myself, like I was quite dense,
Mm.
spiritually and energetically, just like not really in touch with the fact that there are unseen realms, unseen energy, just not really even understanding how sensitive of a human I am. Um, and COVID happened, and um, I had I was working for a company that had me traveling a lot, and so when we were locked down, I actually didn't have much of a community
Mm.
where I lived, and um, I ended up getting into a relationship with a man who I actually will always love, right? In a way, like I can separate now the person who he could be, he who he has the potential to be, the things that I learned from him that are helpful to me now, and I can separate the hurtful things that happened inside of that dynamic. And I ended up getting into a relationship with him. I met him very synchronously. There's no question in my mind that I was supposed to meet him, and we were supposed to go through what we went through. I was very karmic,
Mm.
and about karmic contracts. It was just an energetic pull that I could not, for about 2.5, 3 years, could not pull myself away from. And I remember even saying things to him and to other people, like, I can feel this in my bones. Like, I'm supposed to be here. And also, that relationship felt like, looking back now, it felt like spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't just this. And so I started to tap into, like, whoa, why do things in life happen? Like, what is going on inside of this dynamic? Like, why can I not pull myself away? I've never experienced anything like this in my life. And there were things that I don't wish upon anyone, like that I experienced inside of that relationship. Um, but there was something energetically that tied us together. And now I recognize that tie as my soul working through some of my darker parts, because I would have never been able to admit to anyone prior to that relationship that I was not perfect, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because my conditioning was such that if you were not perfect, then you were not loved.
Mhm.
And that was mirrored inside of that relationship to an extreme degree, right? And now, working through all phases of grief and anger and resentment, getting to a place of neutrality, I think is really important as a survivor of domestic violence, where you can see your part and you can recognize the beauty in another person and their darkness, and allow yourself to create and then maintain the space. Like, just because you forgive someone doesn't mean that you need to allow access,
Right.
right? Um, and I eventually was able. I drove across the country one day, like I really like escaped. I really ran,
Wow.
and I spent a few months away, and I didn't. I grew up moving around a lot, and so I was really lost and very under resourced and very much living in active trauma and processing, trying to process at least. Um, I came back to Denver, which is where I live, and I started to notice all these little um, synchronicities, and I started to put patterns together, whether it was like the address of my apartment had a connection to something in my childhood. And I just thought, I am here. Like, I am here. I am here. Right. And you lose some of that magic, and then it comes back to you, and life shows you, you know, it reappears in sort of its magical way. And I've just been in a process for 3 years now of unraveling who I thought I had to be,
Yep.
and discerning who I am at my core as an energetic being on this 3D planet.
Yeah.
And trying to build um a relationship, a compassionate, as we discussed, at the beginning, a compassionate relationship with myself, so that I can keep learning and growing. Because, well, I'll stop there. I guess the last thing I was going to say is just that, as someone, many of us, relational trauma is a hard thing to live with.
Mhm.
And so getting to know and discerning who I am at my core is a big part of being able to actually manage and move through life functionally and productively, not as like a member of society, but just like making sure that I am safe, right?
Yes.
Emotionally and
Yes.
physically and mentally, making sure that I am moving through life feeling safe, especially as a woman, and especially as a woman with relational trauma.
Yes. Yes. Safety's been a huge thing. I mean, I see it all the time in clients. It's been a huge thing for me personally too, is figuring out how to find and feel that for ourselves. And I think, just like you said, as women, like, that is someplace we have to start every day, is to check in and, like, do I feel safe? How am I keeping myself safe today? Like, I am safe, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm living in a reality where I am safe. I'm in a very loving home. I have a loving husband. I have built a certain life for, like, I'm safe.
Mhm.
But when you experience trauma, whether it's in this lifetime or as a female in past lifetimes, that sticks in your cells, it sticks in your body, and it's really hard to kind of put down those walls and
Totally.
start to trust that you're safe. I want to talk about, to that moment and the process that you're in right now of, like, the self-discovery stage. I think a lot of us, and I see a lot of us as humans, like, that's a scary thing to ask, to find, to even to know the answer of, like, who am I and what do I want out of life. I think a lot of people are walking around, certainly generations before us too, are walking around with no clue to that answer. And the work that it takes to understand it is terrifying.
Mm.
So thank goodness for our traumas, right? Thank goodness for that relationship. And we'll talk about all sides of that. But thank goodness that it forces us down
Yeah.
a path where we have to ask that, because just as you're seeing and know, and I have experienced and know and see with clients as well, like, that path is weird as hell.
Yeah.
And and winding, but it's so fulfilling, and it's so expansive, and it feels like, to experience, even for a second, to experience what wholeness and self-love and self-compassion feel like in a real true way. Like, it's magical. It's so
Yeah.
magical and so worth it.
Hmm. Um, yeah, it is weird as I could swear I'd say it, but it is weird. It gets real weird. Um, and it's hard. Like, you, and I often think about like our parents' generation or my grandparents' generation. I, I actually think that they, when you hear people talk about like light beings coming into the world, and how children now are different. And I think that there's something to that. I mean, I have no fucking clue, right? Like, I don't know, but I'm not sure that our parents' generation or my grandparents' generation even walked around with those questions in their mind, right?
No.
Like, and so what is it about the way, because in a lot of ways it seemingly like society, culture, in a lot of ways we're like not doing very well, right? And yet we have more people, I think, than in the last few generations who are trying to come back to a sense of intimacy, wholeness. Um, yeah, I'll keep it at that: intimacy and wholeness with their own inner world. And I just don't think that that has existed, for who knows how long. And I'm grateful that I was born at this time, with the soul that I was born with, as hard and as weird as it is to be on this journey of feeling so lost. Like, I was just talking to a gal the other day, and we were like, yes, let's become friends. I don't have a lot of women who I can just talk to about how psychotic I feel. Like, am I losing my mind? And I'm like, yeah, let's get weird, like, really, let's get weird. Um, let's talk about all those things that are taboo, that we can't make sense of on our own and we struggle with. Like, I walk around in a concrete jungle, thinking about where my soul came from and why I can't let go of this little comment that was made to me yesterday, because it's driving me insane. Like, why is it driving me insane? Because it reminds me of, whatever. Like, why do I have this feeling about this person? All these things that our current culture would encourage us to just override, and like drive to work in traffic and get really angry at the guy that cut you off, and then immediately walk into the office and like get on the computer and look at the screen. And
Yes.
we just don't have the space.
Yeah, I think as a society, we created these systems that we thought were helping and were allowing productivity or this type of lifestyle that we wanted. And of course, when you start to create societies, there needs to be systems in theory, right? Or at least that's what we've seen historically. And so we've created all these systems, and we're starting to realize, like, hey, actually these systems aren't working for us, and they're taking us further away from our truth and further away from our truest selves. um and I think that our parents' generation and the generation before that, they were just happy to have and be in systems, and the systems kind of worked,
Yeah.
right? Like, they kind of worked for them. They maybe got more ahead further than their parents did, or they had a path that was clearer. And we, our generation, and certainly the generations after us, are starting to question everything. And you speaking about these like lighter beings coming into the world, like, I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I'm pregnant right now, with a son. And for both of them, I feel, and I see other kids too, like, they are a different energy than we are, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And they
Mm-hmm.
are a more evolved, more secure in the truth, a more clear um energy than we are. And like, I feel like our job now is to certainly get ourselves to back to that place, but also to protect
Totally.
the kids coming in, and just allow them the space to like be that energy, and not condition them with our systems, our thoughts, our beliefs.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'll maybe take us on a tangent here, but I think that that is so important, and it's also like part of the work that I am trying to build and want to offer to the world. Is there's so much in the space of healing and coaching that's like, this is the 28-day program, it's my mastermind that's going to change your life, and it's just not, like, it's just not.
Yes.
And I'm going to call it for what it is, but in some ways I feel like that boss bitch culture of 2017 has sort of started to take over this space, and there's still a lot of people out there, young women, who are just trying to find their way. Like they're just
Mm-hmm.
trying, like I was saying earlier, like when I think about myself prior to leaving my last relationship, like the density that I lived in, when I feel into that now, I can sense that in other people. And I can also sense a desire. Like I can touch when someone's like living in a lot of density, and also there's just this like, you can see it in their eyes. There's like a little
Yes.
sparkle. There's like a little bit of grief, just enough to indicate that like, but there's something in their soul that's like itching for something more, like screaming, but does not see a way, a path, like does not understand where to start, and I so the work that I want to cultivate and offer to women is this, you know, these practices, this container for like deep work one on one. I would love, like, I'm trying to figure out a way currently now. I'm hoping to launch my first like official container in the first half of next year, but really building this like doulaship model of companionship. Like I
Yeah.
am not, you know, even if I had a million certifications, right? I have a lived experience, and I've probably explored maybe 15, 20 different modalities over the last 3 years. And some of them were a better match for me than others. Some of them, really helped in times of deep grief or pain, whatnot. But at the end of the day, what's going to be your greatest lighthouse is trying on different hats in order to chisel away at the density and find your own voice, find your own light, find your own intuition. Like, I don't hear voices, right? Like, I don't hear answers to things inside my own head, but I do get flashes of thoughts that come through and randomly, right? And I'm like, oh, that thing that I was thinking about a month ago, here it is, right? And just having someone hold your hand with a regulated nervous system in person, I hope,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like is just, I think, one of the more transformational things that we can offer to each other.
Yes. Once you start doing this work and start helping with others, it becomes very clear that there's like no one's coming to save you, right? Like there's no one who can do the work but the person, and there's no one better equipped to do it than
Yeah.
them. And of course, like having guidance, like you said, having someone with a regulated nervous system, having someone with an outside perspective and some tools to bring in, that is absolutely necessary on the journey, I think, at least with my experience, is like having a partner or many partners in the journey. But any modality guru healer that is taking the power out of your hands or not empowering you, saying,
Hmm.
is incorrect. It's not
Hmm.
wrong. It's just another piece of the system, and we already have so many disempowering things in the whole system's disempowering, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons as a kid, since a young age, I never resonated with traditional religions. It was like this like is so like it what do you mean I have to pray to someone to make my life good? Like I have no control over it. I have to be good, otherwise I'll be struck down. Like all of these things that just don't make any sense. And the journey is very empowering, but not in the boss babe way, right? That's not empowering as a freaking former boss babe, right? Or whatever you want to call it. Like so on that path too. so much pride for being on that path, so much to prove, and so proud of my resilience on that path. This is a much more empowering path, and it's not in the prove it, push forward, like
Mhm.
take what's yours energy. It's a very, very different true empowerment is a very, very different energy.
Yeah. Hmm. Definitely. Yeah. And I think, um, in my experience, one of the things that accelerates someone to find that truth and that empowerment is solitude, is immersion
Mm-hmm.
in nature, right? Like it's really hard and it's scary. It's so scary to spend time by yourself, right? When you are conditioned and you've lived a life grasping for and reaching for and working for external validation. But the primary thing that has transformed who I am as a human and as a woman is multiple times a week, I will immerse myself in nature for hours on end because that silence is transformational. It is transformational.
You can't save yourself if you don't know yourself, right? And I think that's one of the quickest ways. Like I do love modalities when you're first getting in it into things to help you get to know yourself, like astrology, having your natal chart read, understanding your human design. Like all of those are fun tools. They also give you answers that you could tap into yourself. That's the same answers that you could get from your intuition, right? But I love using those tools at the start because I think we a lot of times we need to hear from outside sources, right? But I've learned more about myself. I've gotten more downloads. I've connected to my intuition more than anything else, anything I've ever paid for or anything that ever made any promises just by being silent and being with myself.
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. And the world is so busy, that, and there's just like the trees are alive, the water is alive, like those things have energy, and being able to connect to unadulterated
Mm-hmm.
energy as much as possible, like it will feed you, it will nourish you in a way that no program that you bought from whoever, no supplement, right? Like it will nourish you in ways that nothing else can.
Yes. Yes. I want to talk about something because I think a lot of us struggle with this, and it's on the healing journey. It's like you want to, forgiveness is what I want to talk about. It's something you
Mm.
brought up earlier.
Yeah.
And it's a very evolved, true forgiveness and compassion for someone who has harmed you is a very evolved state to be in. So I want to just pick your brain on that.
Yeah.
You seem to have reached that place, or at least, be walking the border of it. What's been the path? What's your recommendation? How do we get there? Because we all, like, I have moments where I'm totally forgiven
Hmm.
people in my past, and then something happens. And then the little girl inside of me gets triggered. And it's like, okay, well, maybe I haven't fully forgiven them, but then does that mean I'm not as evolved as I think I am because I haven't forgiven them? It's a very interesting emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that forgiveness is an emotion. I think forgiveness is a state,
Mm,
right? And there are emotions that can exist underneath that energy state or that mindset state. I don't love mindset work in general, but I mean, it's a decision that is, you cannot just force, right? So like you're saying, there's a process that you have to move through. I would encourage anyone to to allow life to play out, to allow that process to play out for as long as it needs to. You can, there's times in my past where I've said, yeah, 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 like he's forgiven, I forgive him, but that wasn't actually true, right?
right.
And I only found that through like, oh, I ran into some people that I only know through him. And wow, then I'm standing in my shower and I'm like, fuck, I do not. This is I'm feeling some really crazy things right now.
Mhm.
And I but I do think that allowing yourself to move through all of those phases and all of those emotions, because I think that in order to get to forgiveness, you have to feel and become intimate and compassionate with grief, with resentment, with anger. And if someone is hurting you, in most cases, there is an aspect of yourself that is being mirrored back to you.
Mm.
So, in my opinion, the more important part of forgiving someone else is finding the little thing that's being mirrored to you. Like, in what way are you harming yourself that's being reflected back to you through this person or through this experience? And that is a really difficult thing to do. That's the hardest part, right?
Yeah. Can you give us an example of that? Like,
Um, sure. I mean, it doesn't, I won't go into details around, some of my experiences in my last relationship. Prior to that, I was, or like even at that time, I was still forcing myself into a mold in order to be lovable. And that mold had been um uh, had been introduced very early on in my life. I struggled with eating disorders for 20 years, right? And so, unconsciously, in the back of my mind, if I'm not skinny, then I'm not lovable, then I won't find a partner, right? Then I will always be alone. And these stories are just playing out, right? Like unconsciously. And so, if this partner is treating me like I'm worthless.
yes.
Well, ugh, ugh, what's really hard, Molly, is that actually, as a 30-year-old woman, you have yet to touch that little girl who still believes that.
Yes.
You
Yes.
have not shown her love. But before you can show her love, you have to forgive the adult version of you that still played into that story, right? Um, And then there's all the bits and pieces around family and then it becomes a deeper, darker rabbit hole that you have to go down, right? Um, but I think that forgiveness is a state and allowing yourself to move through all of the emotions. And then when, there's relationships where you can maintain space and you don't have to invite them back into your life. And then there's relationships that you actually want to have as a living entity in your life, but those people are going to trigger the hurt parts of you, the
Mm.
inner child that I don't believe is ever supposed to be like fully healed by the time you die. Like this is the process. Like this is why we're here, right? And so those relationships, I think, maintaining that state of forgiveness, but allowing space for whatever emotion is going to get triggered over the next 30 years, those are mutually exclusive things. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be um, jealous. You're allowed to, and also that doesn't mean that you have to um, live in a state where you can't be around that person.
Mm.
And that's not, there are relationships where I have not yet achieved that myself, right? But I think my capacity to have done that in one relationship shows me, and it, I trust myself now that those other relationships that I'm working on in my life will eventually mend and heal, and I'll be able to interact in that dynamic because I have been able to really forgive someone who I loved and trusted for things that shouldn't have happened, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really interesting. It's something that I battle with because I had I struggled in childhood. I was physically abused. There, you could say, looking at the situation, that my mom, my dad, and my stepdad were all kind of perpetrators in, and had responsibility in the situation. And I think I've found myself in a place where like I can have compassion for those people, and I can see and understand, like, similar to each of us, they had their own conditioning, they had their own journey. The situation and the way they handled it was beautiful, was a catalyst for me in life. Like, I'm really happy where I am in life, and certainly those situations were, at a young age, made me question, like, similar to what you said earlier on, like, why do things happen to certain people? Why is this happening to me? I don't want to be like that. How do I not be like that? And it started me on my spiritual journey very early. So I can have gratitude, I can have compassion, but I haven't mastered the forgiveness piece. And I don't know. I think you said, like, you don't always get there. I don't know if I will. And there's a part of me that so desperately wants to, right? Because um not having forgiveness is a weight that we carry. Not
Hmm.
being able to forgive is a weight that we carry, and I feel it sometimes in some moments. And it is this part of me. Like, I had a situation come up recently, and I was like, well, the healed part of me, the 80% of me is like, sees this from a very evolved perspective and doesn't have any emotional attachments to it, and like is ready to move on. But that little girl, the 20%, she's loud as hell. She's pissed, and she's not willing to let this go. So it's this dance,
Yeah.
managing both, going back to the young girl and letting her know, like, hey, we can let go of those things. But it's, I think it's something that for me, I see it just kind of chipping away at it. I don't think I'm going to have that moment where, okay, tomorrow I'm going to open my eyes and completely forgive. It's just like it let it dissipate a little bit more, a little bit more. Maybe it never gets to zero. But the compassion part comes a little easier, because there's pieces of that feel logical, right? Like, you can put the logical pieces together. Again, what we talked about earlier, if you can have compassion for yourself, which is something I had to learn, that you can start to have that equal compassion for others. But the forgiveness is a weird piece of the healing journey, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, um, you just chisel away at it I mean, I never would have told you 3 years ago that I would be here and
Mm-hmm.
and be able to talk about that relationship and that human in this way. But you just chisel away at it, and I just think well, when we discuss parents, like, similarly, like, those relationships are, I mean, they hit the core of our soul and what we came here to learn, right? And you just, yeah, you got to chisel away at it, and I think eventually you get to a place of neutrality, and then the state of forgiveness um, can be more easily accessed, um, because, and it may never happen, right? Like, I don't know, but with certain relationships, but I do think you chisel away at it, you have compassion, you move through your emotions, you remind yourself that there are things that you're grateful for within that dynamic because it's made you who you are. And eventually, I think we can all get to that place of neutrality, and then forgiveness is an easier state to access.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Neutrality. I like that. And neutrality is a good feeling,
Yeah.
to not have the emotion and the stories attached to things. Like, it's very uncomfortable when you first feel it, right?
Mhm.
But you realize, like, that is evolved. And I have to tell you, forgiveness feels like it feels like a very important topic around you, and something that I think you could help a lot of people with. As you were talking about forgiveness, I saw like an auric field
No.
appear around you, like a rose pink with like little hints of like light blue. So
Mm.
I feel like there's something there for you.
Well,
um
thanks. I'll have to watch it back. That's exciting.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I've had to forgive. I mean, so like, as a survivor of domestic assault, Um, and not just physical, right? There was a lot of things going on inside of that relationship. I I mean, you have I just think a lot of times in traditional um psychology and traditional therapy, a lot of times resources for women in those situations, they keep you stuck in the victimhood. They keep you stuck
Yes.
in pointing the finger, like understanding why he did it, right? And look, I was fortunate. Like I didn't. Uh, there was no legal papers signed between us. I don't have children with this human. Like I know other women in similar situations, and it's a lot more complicated, right? It can be a lot more complicated. Um, Not to say that like our finances weren't blended and that wasn't something that was difficult to manage and all of that, but um, yeah, when I first left and I was really starting to like dig in, a lot of it was just like housing resources, which I didn't necessarily need at the time, and then things that I was finding, books, um, therapy circles, etc. It's a lot about understanding why someone else did something, and
Yes.
for me, that just never resonated. Something was missing. I could feel it, and the part that was missing was like owning the fact that, as I mentioned earlier on the call, yes, I felt this energetic soul level connection with this person. I could not get myself out. And also, if I had broken that contract sooner, how different my life could have been now sitting here, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
if I'm being honest, there's still things that I wish were different about my life right now, right? Like I'm not at a place where I'm fully like everything is, like roses and sunshine, and no, like my life, I'm still dealing with the repercussions of remaining in a relationship for too long. And
Mhm.
I had to own that, own those parts, understand what they were doing, and have gratitude for them. And I think forever and always in this lifetime will I be walking the edge that you were just talking about around forgiveness with myself. But I think that I have touched enough of those parts and walked enough of the edge to be at a place where I'm no longer, I mean, for a long time, because for a long time, probably a solid year and a half. I mean, I was so angry at
Mm.
myself. And it still comes up, randomly, just in like strange frustration about, my daily life or how I'm showing up. And it feels overwhelming. It feels strangling, right? And the only thing that the option that you have is to just sit with that, like sit with how much pain your system feels for being suffocated
Yeah.
by someone else and by yourself and by society, and like all of that is layered on top, right? Like things don't just happen to people. There is a trajectory of a storyline that
Yeah.
souls, I believe, chose in some capacity to experience. And now looking back, it makes a lot of sense that even though like it should have never happened to me, right? Like that's not something that should have happened to Molly. Um, and it was never something that was like that I had been exposed to, right? But looking back on my conditioning and how much I silenced myself, how little I actually knew myself, how much external validation I desired and tried to achieve. It makes all the sense in the world that that's a part of my story.
Yes. And I love you sharing that so candidly because that's one of the goals here, right? Is like to have someone listen to this and be like, wait a minute, am I doing any of those things? Because I bet, and I say this from my own experience, like there, and my audience has heard me say this before, there was plenty before, and not talking about my childhood trauma, but just more in adult life when I hit my rock bottom. There were 100 signs before that I could have paid attention to, right? From the universe, gifts from the universe that were far less traumatic than that end thing that just took me down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, our generation, again, the stories, the conditioning, the oldest daughter syndrome, all of that, the systems that we grew up in, unfortunately, we were in a stage of life where we were proud of our resilience, where we had a goal and we were getting there, we were moving toward that goal no matter what, right? Not listening to anything around us. And I really hope that these conversations can help people start from a much different place of like, I don't have to hit rock bottom to have a spiritual awakening, to start to pay attention to the signs, to start to pay attention to what my body's telling me, to want to tap into my intuition. Like, okay, yeah, I'm feeling a little bit burnt out. Maybe that's a sign. I get migraines. What's that a sign of? Let me ask my body. Like, I'm so grateful for this conversation, just for the fact that hopefully it spares some people from going as far as you did,
Yeah.
going as far as I did, right? To where we had to have this huge, monumental catalyst that took us down and took us down to a deep dark hole that we had to dig ourselves out of.
Yeah. And I something that just came to me is that, like, and also it's okay if you do.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
think our society, even now in my life, I'm like, wow, last month was sort of really was like the 3-year anniversary of my spiritual journey, my inquisition into myself and my life and my patterns. And I thought, everything is the same and everything is different. And I feel like I'm at a 0 point again, particularly in a lot of material, tangible ways. And I was like, kind of starting to spiral out a little bit and be like, fuck, I failed at this healing journey. I can't even do that. And then I thought, wait a minute, you're an entirely different human on the inside. And so, even if you feel like you're at a 0 point again, um, you're doing whatever you do next is going to be done with a level of presence that you have never,
Yes. Yes.
ever been able to hold before. And, you know, there's so many different opinions out there. And sometimes I even question, like, what's the point of my opinion, kind of thing? What's the point of my story to share if I truly believe that everyone is their own, you know, savior and their only savior? But I think mirrors are the only way that we learn, right? Um and I just think that a lot of times we hear that, your life changes one small step at a time, but also sometimes, whether it's conscious or unconscious, the things that change our life the fastest are when things burn to the ground.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and it doesn't, I guess, I want to encourage people to, like, what makes it worse is the shame on top of it. So, like,
Mm,
let it burn. Like, whatever it is in your life that you're holding on to, and I need this, like, I need my own medicine, like, let it burn. Like, just
yes.
see what's on the other side. And I think for the first time in my life, um, I have more excitement about anything potentially burning to the ground
Yes.
than fear.
Yes.
And that's a
Yes.
massive, massive shift that I want people to, I want everyone to be able to experience that.
Change is good. Change is
Yeah.
good. And most times when we look back, we realize, oh, change always brought about a better version of
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
And I love how, and you said that as I was thinking, as you were saying it, like with clients, when I see the burn it down moment, I'm like, okay, I know it's chaos, but let me tell you, it's really exciting. Like you get to start on this whole new journey. This is your burn it down moment. And they're just like, wait, shit, what? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's so exciting. And I've had plenty in my life and learned, really only in hindsight. And now I truly believe it because I've seen it for myself and seen it for so many others. Like those burn it down moments, like that change, like it always brings about expansion and a, a better quality of life.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Even if it's, yeah. And sometimes, the other thing that started to happen, like October, November for me again around this like 3 year mark. And we haven't talked much about astrology, but there's a lot of big shifts, right, happening. And if you have any inclination, if anyone listening has any inclination towards that lineage, like I would say go explore, go dive in, and I'm happy to I'm no expert, but I am studying it and have studied it and used it in my journey. Um, I'm happy to have a conversation, but there are big shifts happening. And what I was going to say is just that sometimes when you allow things to burn to the ground, you also get to a point where you're like, whoa, I think I was trying to plant seeds in infertile soil. And so, of
Mm,
course, everything has burned because I don't actually know that I want that thing that I thought I wanted that I thought I was working towards,
yes.
you know?
Yes.
And then you get to play and you get to explore. And yeah, I think that would be fun. Like, so,
I love the energy to that. And I think that that feels like, I love the journey you've kind of taken us on in this conversation where there is the deep, dark moments, right? There's the transformational work that is not always light and play. It is serious work and it's a journey. But then at the end of the day, it all is kind of magic and fun and joyful. And like this experience, our experience here on this planet is meant to be magical and meant to be joyful. And we go through what I found is like going through all of that, the pain, the trauma, the digging myself out of the mud, like has brought me to a place where I'm like, actually, it's not that serious. It's like
yeah,
life is not that serious. We've complicated it so much. And like once we can shed the systems, the conditioning, the stories, or at least even parts of those, we start to see like, oh, this is actually a really magical experience. And I am here to experience joy and the magic of being a human and the things that I can only experience in this human existence. And it just feels much more in flow and much easier than constantly trying to prove ourselves, be someone for someone else, like all the things that we've listed and that you've named. Yeah. And I think you've really showcased for us like the journey is worth it. And like no matter what part of the journey you're at, it's fine. Just
it's
keep going. Just take it one day at a time. And like you're going to get there. You're going to get to a place where you are less dense, where things feel lighter, where you start to see the joy in life, where you start to understand the purpose or the non-purpose of
yeah.
it all.
Mhm. Like we're just here to be here. Like there is no job, relationship, I mean, even state of being. Like there's no state of being that makes anyone better than, anyone else. Like it is all beautiful. It is all part of the plan or the game, like however you want to think about it. I mean, each of those perspectives is like what makes this playground fun, you know? But we're just here to be. Like, there's no
Yeah.
value on top of our heads in reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing your
Yeah.
journey with us. You have so much wisdom and so much of it that I feel like you just have carried with you all along, and so much of it that has come from your journey. So I can't wait to see how you share it with the world. Can you tell people how they can find you, how they can work with you?
Yeah. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is embodied woman, IN, embodied woman. And yeah, reach out to me in a DM. Keep your eyes out for some launches early next year. And yeah, I'd love to hear from anyone, especially women who are moving through transition and feel alone, especially if you have or are experiencing any sort of violence relationally. I would love to be a listening ear, a mirror, and a hand for you to hold. So I don't care if you are in a different time zone in another country. Like it's important to me to be a resource in those situations. So just know that someone is out there who really cares and who's lived it.
Yeah, and Molly, thank you for turning your experience into a gift and something that will help others. Like that is very beautiful, and that's kind of what it's all about, right? Our generation, we are turning our trauma into a resource and a gift to help others, and I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was such an honor.
Yeah, thank you, Molly. Thank you, listeners. I will link all of the places to find Molly in the show notes. Definitely check her out and share this with a friend who might need to hear her message. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you, Molly.
Thank you.